What's up, everybody? This week I'm working on another dramatic sky background that I'm going to end up using as the background for an upcoming painting that I'm doing. And I'm going to walk through all the steps that I've used in this process to create this type of background. I'm going to be working on a gessoed wood panel, and I'm using a mixture of slow dry matte medium and an acrylic retarder. Two different products that do essentially the same thing, or something very similar, which is they're used to keep the acrylic paint active longer so that you can blend it easier. So I'm just putting down a thin coat of that on this wood panel, and it turns out that it was a little bit too much, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But once I get the panel coated, I go in with a round brush, and I'm just basically laying down color blocks. At this point, I'm not trying to paint clouds. I'm just trying to put down some varied shapes and colors, and lay them down fairly loose. I could already tell that I had used too much of the medium at this point. It was just the paint was very, very fluid, and I think that it's just going to take time. It takes time to get a feel for this. I think there's a happy medium between keeping the paint wet and active, but then having it not be too fluid, if that makes any sense. It almost needs to feel like butter. Is kind of the feeling I get when it's working really well. It's similar to oil paint. At this point, it was just too loose. I went back over with a large dry brush to blend it in, just to see how I could do, and turned out it wasn't working. So here I'm taking a paper towel and just removing a lot of the paint and some of the slow dry gel as well. Just trying to find that balance of, like I said, not too much of the medium and just the right amount. Once I lifted that off, which obviously is super easy to do, I tried to leave again enough behind that it would still work the way I wanted it to and not be completely dry. I had to basically start over, laying down the color blocks again. It's funny that I'm painting this with the darker colors to the bottom. In the end, like as I'm recording this audio, it's like weeks later, and I've started painting over this background, putting in some elements and creating the actual artwork that I'm going to, more of the artwork that I'm going to be making. And I actually turned the painting around and put the dark part at the top because it just felt better. At any rate, this second pass, the paint was a much better consistency for blending, and I'm just using this large dry brush to just very, very slowly and lightly go over the color blocks and kind of blend them together. Now I'm going to be toning this in the end with transparent red, several different colors. So I could have just painted this whole thing in black and white and gray tones, but I like to experiment with color along the way just to see what kind of effects I can create. And that's what I'm doing here, just mixing in some greens and some blues and a little bit of red, or magenta, I guess, and just playing. And it's actually fairly effective. I think that, in a lot of ways, I was a little bit surprised, I guess, by how effective this was. And I could have, just left it alone and used it, as it was. But my intentions from the beginning were to tone it. So that's why I was goofing around with all different types of colors here, because I'm going to end up covering it with a single tone that will sort of unify it and bring it all together. And we'll see. Maybe in the end you can notice some of these colors still showing up, or at least maybe you'll be able to see the effect of some of these colors in the end, even though it's being toned with the transparent magenta later on. This is one of those things where you just have to use your gut, and I could do this forever. You could continue to paint these things over and over and over again for days and never be done. So and I do tend to overwork them, especially right now, because I'm still learning. What works well, what I like, what kind of effects I can get with certain techniques. And it's all, like I said and say often, just one big experiment for me at this point, and I'm just playing. I like to play at these smaller sizes, knowing that as I learn more about this, that I could translate it hopefully to larger sizes one day when I start to step up and do bigger and bigger painting. So the next step, really the final step here, is to tone or glaze this entire piece. And I can't remember the exact color that I'm using, but it's a transparent magenta of some kind. I think I'm mixing it with water in this one, but I have experimented recently with using Floetrol and some glazing mediums, transparent glazing mediums, and other things like that. So basically I'm trying to mix up a very fluid, thin layer, and you have to be careful with this because if you use more than 50% water, it can actually cause the paint to flake off, at some point in the future. So I've been using Floetrol more than I have water recently. I'm also mixing in a little yellow because I wanted it to have kind of an orange tint. You could also just use this paint directly out of the tube and just paint it very, very quickly over the whole piece, and it will work as well. Um, it's interesting. I mean, you definitely have to experiment with this and get a feel for it. At first, you feel like you're going to ruin, and maybe maybe I am ruining it in some people's minds, but you feel like you're going to ruin your work. But if you just keep brushing it and thinning it out and spreading it out, you get some really nice effects, which you can see here is starting to come together. And I actually go back sometimes with a paper towel to thin it out, just to, again, play with it, experiment, and get nice lighting effects. I actually went back and hit it with another transparent layer of quinacridone nickel, I believe. Kind of gives it like an orangey glow. Here is a still image of the painting in progress after I started to add some elements on top of this background, just so you can see what it's looking like currently. I'm going to have a video coming up showing me painting those elements if you're interested in that. So hopefully this is helpful. It's really easy to do. It's really fun. So if you haven't tried it, I would say give it a try. And if you've done backgrounds like this and had success and have ideas about things that you've learned, please share them. Put them in the comments. Love to hear from you. Hopefully this is useful, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.